On October 9, 1990, Richard Thornburg gave a formal apology to the Japanese Americans who were interned during World War II and gave them each $20,000 in reparations. George Bush stated, "We can never fully right the wrongs of the past, but we can take a clear stand for justice and recognize that serious injustices were done to the Japanese Americans during World War II. Research played an important role in recognizing the serious injustices served to the Japanese Americans that were interned during the war. 2/3 of those interned were born in America, and therefore deserved all of the same rights as other American citizens, but were locked away in isolated internment camps based solely on ancestry. Upon closer inspection, Japanese American internment could not be justified or excused as a tragic mistake caused by wartime hysteria. This is essentially a less-known civil rights movement, the fight against racism and the fight for redress against internment." Internment originally began after the Pearl Harbor bombing, when some Americans believed that Japanese Americans were loyal to Japan. They were called enemy aliens and were forced to carry registration cards. The government was going to remove Japanese Americans, as they made up less than 2% of the West Coast population. However, over 35% of the Hawaiian population consisted of Japanese Americans, so it would cripple the manufacturing of goods needed for war. So free zones were developed and later converted into internment camps. When internment began, they were first taken to an assembly center, then to a relocation center, where they were interned. Typical internment camps were located in a swamp or desert and provided a family of 6 with a small single-room apartment. They were served cafeteria food, had to stand in line for everything, and worked for only $12 to $19 a month. They were later tested based on loyalty and could join the U.S. Army if they chose to.
After the attack on Pearl Harbor, some citizens believed that Japanese Americans were loyal to Japan, which caused even President Roosevelt to fear them. General DeWitt abused this fear, saying, "We know that they are communicating at sea," when he actually had no idea. On December 30th, random searches began in houses in which any enemy alien lived, which created more suspicion in the public's eye. Leland Ford devised a solution. Any Japanese American willing to be interned was loyal, and whoever refused was suspicious. Internment was very controversial due to population differences. In California, most people were pro-internment because Japanese Americans made up less than 2% of the population, while in Hawaii, the state most affected by the bombing, they were against it because they made up over 1/3 of the population. In the end, less than 15% of Japanese Americans in Hawaii were interned.
Another reason internment was the fact that Japan was holding 100 American hostages, and America saw an opportunity to return them. Threatened to intern 10,000 Japanese Americans if they weren't returned in under 48 hours. The U.S. government promised to pay all expenses for citizens of other North and South American countries to be interned in America. And Canada, Mexico, Panama, and Peru all cooperated. However, internment in Peru was different. Racism and business competition, not fear, caused Peruvian internment. The U.S. eventually realized that many Peruvian internees were wrongly deported for those same reasons. This became problematic when Peru refused to reclaim them, so they were carted off to Japan, where many only connected through ancestry. After years of work, laws changed to allow the Peruvian Japanese to stay if they could prove that they'd stay in America for 10 years, and the deportation would cause personal financial issues. Eventually, Peru welcomed them back, but less than 100 returned, while 300 stayed in America.
A man named Gordon Hirobayashi refused to register for evacuation and disobeyed curfew to take stand for human rights. Gordon spent 5 months in jail before his trial with a racist judge. He argued for his constitutional rights, was sentenced and appealed. The appellate court sent him to the Supreme Court, where it was argued that Japanese Americans were an integral part of the community and were loyal to Japan. Therefore, internment was deemed constitutional. After the last camp closed in 1946, internment survivors organized a redress movement, and the case was reopened through coram nobis.
Internment conditions were poor, and camps were set up like apartment complexes, with attached laundromats and cafeterias. A family of 6 shared a single-room apartment, making a maximum salary of $19 a month per person. Internment caused stress, resentment, and families spending little time together, with kids stealing and forming gangs. Though in the future, some of these intense psychological effects faded, they left lasting scars in the minds of internees.
Japanese Americans resisted due to the dishonesty, racism, poor conditions, and inhumane treatment of internment, along with many other reasons. They resisted with hunger and labor strikes along with campaigns. In a farm labor strike, an internee was accidentally killed. Due to the resistance, the camps became more oppressive and internees were eventually required to carry ID badges at all times. In one strong example of rebellion, an internee was being arrested and the entire camp volunteered to go to jail with him, causing a seizure of personal items. On January 15, 1944, the military turned control back to the government, having eliminated the rebellion. To do so, they forcibly isolated the rebels and oppressed the internees. This topic is so important because even though the Japanese Americans had very separate views and goals, they all united against a common enemy in an attempt to guarantee basic human rights for themselves and their children.